Hi, Jay Jog. This is Charis, and welcome to join us today. Could you just say hi to everyone and give us a brief introduction?
Hey everyone, my name is Jay Jog. I'm co-founder at Sei Labs, and at Sei Labs we're building the Sei blockchain, which is the first parallelized EVM L1.
Okay, so let's start with the recent tech updates. With the Sei Giga update rolling out, can you share the most significant performance milestones achieved so far? And practically speaking, how does this update change the experience of high-frequency trading dApps on Sei?
So, as a brief history on Sei, we initially started building back in 2021, and we initially were building a Cosmos-based Layer 1 blockchain. So we're supporting Cosmos smart contracts, and we went live in August of 2023. Now, as it turns out, August of 2023 was nearly a year after Terra blew up, and Terra was really the only blockchain that had a strong Cosmos developer community. Outside of Terra, no one else was really building with Cosmos. In our case, it was exceptionally difficult to get Cosmos developers to build on Sei. So we realized that we really need to be supporting the EVM, and that's when we built one of our core theses, which is that the EVM is here to stay. Once we built that thesis, we needed to start looking into how we can improve the EVM. And what we realized is that the EVM is fundamentally lacking in performance. So this was back in 2023. At that time, Ethereum was supporting around 50 transactions per second, and most of the rollups that are being built on top, they're supporting around 200 transactions per second. There wasn't really any high-performance chain on the market for the EVM, and we realized that if we're able to help support a magnitude greater than what's currently offered, we can enable entirely new types of use cases to get built on top of Sei. One example would be order books. An order book cannot be built on Ethereum or any Ethereum L2 just because of the number of transactions per second that it requires. If you look at NASDAQ, for example, it needs 20,000 transactions per second, and NASDAQ only makes up 10% of global securities trading volume. So you need around 200,000 transactions per second to be able to support all global securities trading volume. There is no blockchain that is even remotely close to be able to support that right now, literally no one at all. And that's when we realized that if we're able to improve the throughput on the EVM, then that is something that could be pretty meaningful in terms of getting more developer activity to happen on Sei. So this led to us building Sei V2, which is the first parallelized EVM. And with that, we're able to get the best of both Ethereum and Solana. We're able to get the EVM and the developers, tooling, mindshare that comes with that. And we're able to get the benefits of Solana and chains like Solana in terms of having extremely high performance. We went live with Sei V2 in July of 2024. And at that point, activity just started to go up and to the right. We've seen around 5 billion transactions since then. We've seen around 100 million unique active addresses on Sei, and we've seen over 1 million daily active users. So the next question for us became, how do we continue improving the base level infrastructure? And we realized two things. First of all, the next milestone we care about is supporting all global securities trading volume. And as I was alluding to before, that comes out to be around 200,000 transactions per second, or 5 gigagas per second of throughput. The second realization that we had is that with a single proposer system, which is what Sei V2 has, there's basically one validator that is proposing a block. And that validator, all of its network resources are very saturated. Every other validator is kind of just sitting idle, chilling, waiting to receive whatever the block contents are. If you can go from that to having a multi-proposer type of setup, where each validator is proposing its own blocks, you're able to get much better usage of the network resources. This led to us looking into the different multiple concurrent producer approaches back in 2024, and we found out about this new paper that recently been published by researchers from UC Berkeley and Cornell called Autobahn. And the idea with Autobahn is you have multiple concurrent producers that are all helping you get greater throughput. So that was the unlock that we had. We started building it in 2024. At this point, we have internal test nets that are able to get a little bit over 5 gigas per second worth of throughput. So we could support all securities trading activity on that if we wanted to. And we're able to get around 200 to 300 millisecond block times with that system, which allows us to basically offer an experience where you can't even notice a disruption from the user side whenever you're submitting a transaction, compared to a chain like Ethereum where you might have to wait for 12 seconds, and there is a pretty big disruption.
Yeah, I think that's pretty technical, and I think that's very impressive for all the explanation.
Is it too technical?
But I think it's okay. But for me, as a non-financial marketer, I totally understand it.
You said you couldn't understand it?
I totally understand it.
Oh, you understood it? Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So next question is looking ahead. Sei is planning a strategic shift to become an EVM-only chain by mid-2026. What was the decisive factor behind moving away from a dual VM architecture? And how are you managing the migration for the existing Cosmos native ecosystem?
Yeah. So Sei is becoming an EVM-only chain. When we got started, it was CosmWasm only. And we were able to build up a small but relatively active community of people that were using CosmWasm. So when we started to focus on the parallelized EVM, we realized we couldn't just cut out the CosmWasm side entirely because that's where the entire user base was. We need to continue supporting it for backwards compatibility reasons and then also adding in EVM support. And we realized that the most straightforward way of doing this would be by having this dual VM architecture where each account has a CosmWasm side and an EVM side. And one private key allows you to access both sides of it. And it works. It's just more complex than you would want from a user standpoint or a developer standpoint. Because from a developer standpoint, like you need to start accounting for things such as CosmWasm and EVM events. And if you're like an indexer, you're not used to doing that at all. So like now you need to add in special functionality to account for Sei. From a user standpoint, like most users don't understand how this dual VM architecture works. So it just ends up being too complex for them. So we launched this dual VM architecture in July of 2024. And very quickly, all activity basically started happening on the EVM side. It's something like around 99% of activity is happening with the EVM, and only 1% is happening on CosmWasm. And the stuff that's happening on that CosmWasm/Cosmos side is stuff that could pretty easily happen on the EVM side as well. So that's when we realized that, okay, if we have just one virtual machine, it'll make life easier for everyone. It'll make life easier for users, it'll make life easier for developers, it'll make life easier for the protocol developers as well because we can more easily support the chain. And yeah, I mean, that led to us putting out the SIP3 proposal. The community was very bought into it as well because the community realized that if you become EVM only, everything just becomes easier. So that proposal got passed. And I think right now, the most difficult part of all of this is getting people to migrate their liquidity over to the EVM side. This is something that largely I would say has been done so far, but I think when there is that explicit cutoff point that happens, that's when you'll start seeing more people rush to migrate their liquidity over. And if they don't do it, it might be a little bit more burdensome for them to interact with it because it might be difficult, for example, if you have USDC issued by Noble, to bridge it off the ecosystem if you needed to. So I think that's going to be the most difficult part of this migration.
Yeah, totally understand. Yeah, from the user perspective, EVM is much friendly to me. Yeah. And finally, the parallel EVM narrative gets more crowded in 2026 with projects like Monad. How does Sei differentiate its developer experience and ecosystem support to maintain its first mover advantage?
Yeah. So Sei announced the parallelized EVM back in 2023, and it went live with it back in 2024, which is over a year ahead of anyone else that really tried to do that. I think that gave us enough time to start building up some meaningful traction. For example, I was talking about before, we have over 5 billion transactions, 100 million different addresses that have interacted with the chain, 1 million daily active users. This then resulted in, at its peak, around $1.8 billion of TVL in the ecosystem. So it resulted in more money coming on chain, which then resulted in more funds that are issuing assets on Sei. So in the past year, we've had 6 different real-world assets launch on Sei. There's a fund from BlackRock, fund from Apollo, a fund from Brevin Howard, Hamilton Lane, and Laser. And 2 weeks ago, there was also Ondo that announced USDY on Sei. So basically, launching the chain led to activity, which led to funds that are bringing in new types of real-world assets. And I think it becomes a virtuous loop. When you start having these funds coming in, it makes it easier for the entire cycle to reset in terms of more users coming on. So if you zoom out, I think that that flywheel is already something that Sei has that a lot of other ecosystems are still starting to build up. I think the bigger open-ended question for all these chains, though, is how do you get your first killer application to come into the ecosystem? Because until you get your first pump.fun or your first polymarket, it's really difficult to have that flywheel where other strong developers are excited to come and start building in your ecosystem. And that's why one of the biggest things that we've started doing that other chains have not yet is a very strong focus on two things. The first is incubation, and the second is finding new distribution partners to help with getting non-crypto native users. From the incubation standpoint, getting external developers to come and start building in your ecosystem is really, really difficult. What is much more controllable by you is to start building those applications yourself and then trying to do your best to fundraise for them and to help them succeed. That's something that Sei started to do, which many other ecosystems haven't really considered at all yet. They're still playing the same kind of like hackathon style of playbooks where they're trying to get developers by like organizing hackathons and developer-focused events, which candidly does not work. So I think that incubation-focused direction is going to become the new meta moving forward, and Sei once again is early to the game there. The second thing is basically everyone right now is competing for the same 10,000 crypto native users. Like if you're launching an app, you're offering incentives, and it's the same users that are flocking to you. Now, there's millions, if not tens of millions, of very tech native people outside of crypto that would be very open to using crypto applications if you're able to somehow get in front of them. So I think one thing that Sei is doing is putting Sei in front of those users. So I think both of these two things are how you remain competitive, by building your own applications and then helping get those applications in front of more users.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think 2026 will be very promising for Sei.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you so